is a meeting with the South Suburban Foundation. Julie, do you want to get us started? Julie.
Sure. Thank you for having us. Oh, thank you for having us. Thank you for having us. We have several representatives from the South Suburban Park Foundation. So I will just go ahead and let them introduce themselves. And then we are here we can go over our proposal, we can speak more to it, we can answer questions, and just proceed from that. My name is Julie Madden, and I'm with the foundation, and I'm a help with fundraising and marketing and outreach.
I'm Dale Flowers. I'm a charter trustee of the foundation since 1979. Holy cow, that's a long time. And my partner Charlie over there, we've built a lot of trails, haven't we? Anyway.
Hi, I'm Carrie McLaughlin. I'm the current chairman of the South Suburban Park Foundation, and I live in Beaumar.
Hi, I'm Bev Bradshaw, and I'm the former chair of the foundation, and I live in Englewood.
My name is Clasina Vanderwerf, and I serve on the Cherry Hills Village City Council. And I also am on the board of the Cherry Hills Land Preserve and the Highlines Canal Working Group.
Trustee.
I'm Stan Brown. I've been a board member for probably 20 years and supported a lot.
Great. Jim?
I'm Jim Taylor. I'm on this foundation board as well. And I don't know how long I've been there. 12 years probably.
Long time.
So I'm not sure, would you like us to go over what our proposal was and sort of the history and that?
Yeah.
Okay,
that'd
great.
be great.
Okay, I'm just going to pull out my notes here so I don't forget anything. We have, basically the foundation represents all jurisdictions in the South Metro area. Our mission is to create, build, develop greenways, trails, open space, provide any outdoor recreation that we can for the residents down this way. Our major projects tend to be regional, so they're like the primary spines of the trail. As most of you know, the South Platte River Trail, the Mary Carter Greenway, is the premier trail project of the foundation, and most of our projects are continuing going east or west of that spine. Let's see. This year, what we have requested, and this year was different with the City of Littleton, was through your community grant process. In the prior years, we have submitted just letters of request for funding, but this year it was through your grant process. And we requested $20,000 for administrative costs, and that supports the foundation in all of its marketing, outreach, education, safety, for all residents and visitors of the South Metro area to the trails and greenways.
Just a comment. We are asking for some administrative money because most of the grants we get, Arapahoe County, GOCO, et cetera, do not allow us to take any administrative funds out of them. We have to spend 100% of that grant. And we, quite honestly, get to the point where we don't have any money to operate. We can't pay Julie. We have no employees, by the way. We've never written a paycheck in the 30-plus years that we've been in business. So we are all volunteers. We have Julie and another fellow named Bob Cerns who act as consultants, and we use them when we need them. So we run lean and mean, thanks to South Suburban providing us with the secretary to record our minutes and that type of thing. Basically, we are all volunteers.
So in addition to the administrative funds that we requested this year, we are also requesting $100,000, and this money would be used to be put in a pot. So as projects come along, and these are projects that the community asks for, they come to us and say, we would like this link, or we would like to make this a crusher fine trail, or we all know the South Platte River Mary Carter Greenway is very popular. So how can we look at that trail and make it more, accommodate more users? So the $100,000 would go into a pot of money, and as that pot was built, then we could use that as a project comes up. So in a way, it would be not holding for too long, just until there were enough funds pooled together. And we are going to other municipalities. We've gone to the city of Lone Tree. We're scheduling a meeting with the city of Centennial because the foundation truly represents all of the different municipalities down in the South Metro area.
I'll break in just a moment and tell you that David Bolton, another member of the foundation board, has arrived.
Hi. Sorry I'm late. Okay. Julie, are you receiving funding from other cities?
We have in the past, and this in the last several months is when we've been going to the different cities because it's the budget process. So nothing's been 100% committed to date, but we have spoken to them.
Who are they?
The city of Lone Tree, and then the city of Centennial has provided in-kind for the Centennial, the East-West Trail, support with that, to move that project forward, as well as the district. They've been leading that effort as well.
So there's just,
Greenwood Village,
Yeah, and Greenwood Village
Englewood.
and Inglewood. Those are,
and Sheridan has also contributed.
yeah.
That's right. That's right. One of the great successes we've had over the years has been to bring groups together that didn't necessarily want to work together. I will go back to years ago when Englewood and Littleton didn't speak very fondly of each other. Beverly remembers that. But yet, we were the gel that made things work because all three of us got together. We were the neutral agency or group, and we were able to make things work. We have, in our 34 years of existence, knock on wood, we have never had a failure in a project that we've taken on.
Do you have an annual budget?
Our operating budget is about 55,000, and that includes printing materials. I distributed these maps. This is our second edition of these maps, and the first edition, Arapahoe County helped with the funding. The second edition, we funded it, and just, to print these and distribute them would be part of the budget, as well as my time, as well as any, our communications, our emailing. We always support and market all of the city's events and information. I know that you're working on this Be Cool, Share the Path, and I've already spoken to Kelly about putting this in one of our email blasts, as well as we have a new website. So we're here to help promote and market all of the different partners' events that are related to greenways, trails, and open space.
And if I might add, some of that money also went into making a good database that was reliable instead of the piecemeal one that we had. And so we've been trying to modernize, rather than send out a paper newsletter that just adds to the landfills, we do electronic newsletters, we do electronic blasts. Took a long time to make that transition because it took us a long time to get all the email addresses from the people we were sending the hard copies to. So, but that has been an ongoing program for the last 5 years, is to modernize the database. We've looked at different software that if you're on the trail, is it local?
It's not Locomotion, it's through Google Maps, and it's trail mobilized, optimized trail maps. So our new website has that feature. So if anyone is out on the trail, you can see where you're at, and it will show you the trail and the elevation and the distance and all that. Because our goal really is to communicate with as many trail users as possible, and hopefully listen to what they want and need and be able to support that.
And our focus the last 10 years have been trying to make east-west connections. Because north-south in Denver, period, is easy, but east-west in the metro area is very difficult.
Starting in 1998, Littleton was our partner through 2012, or 9, I'm sorry, on the Big Dry Creek Trail. Littleton was responsible for giving us, between what the city did itself, urban drainage money they forwarded to us, et cetera, almost $900,000 that went directly into the Big Dry Creek Trail. We're also working with Littleton at this point on the Littleton Community Trail. And
The Littleton what?
Community Trail, City Ditch.
The city ditch. And that, I know that I've been writing a lot of the grants for those, and that's being paid through the foundation. So the administrative cost includes my time for grant writing, Arapahoe County grants, Great Outdoors Colorado grants, all the marketing, the database, the new website. That took us about 6 months just to hire a website designer, figure out what we needed on the website, making sure we had the search engine optimized, is that the right wording? And because we really want to run more efficiently, because it is just myself, and it's only 30 hours a month is all that I work. And we have Bob Stearns, who helps with the planning and design. So, you know, like Dale said, we really run on a lean budget.
The other thing is, I understand there's a question about $100,000 that was intended for a bridge from Littleton High School to Big Dry Creek. Is that true? That
There was a question at the last meeting about where $100,000 was. And what the money was initially for was to build a bridge from the Big Dry Creek Trail to Littleton High School. The community did not want that bridge, so we have that money, and it's designated for the Big Dry Creek. And I believe there's discussions about using it for the trailhead that's on the east side, where the district had acquired, I believe, acquired the land there. So that's the $100,000.
And you have that money?
We have that money.
We have that money.
That's from us.
We're waiting, yeah, that's from you in 2009. We're waiting for the
Master plan for the Big Dry Creek Trailhead.
Thank you.
Land is owned by
Thank
the
you.
district.
Right.
Part of the thing, council, is that that money, that $100,000 was put into a designated fund for Big Dry Creek. The foundation has always taken the position that if money goes into a designated fund, it's just like a column, it's just like our impact fees, it stays there. It's not able to move out of
It
there.
has to be used.
And so what the request is this year is $100,000 that is not into a designated fund, because you can't build anything for $100,000. You can't put in a trail, you can't put in a bridge, you can't do anything for that. So the money's got to be pooled in order to utilize it for something else in the future. So that's why it was asked that the $100,000 be undesignated for 2014.
Well, and quite honestly, Littleton has always been the leader in making the regional trails work and get financed. When Littleton gave money, then Englewood jumped in, then Centennial, et cetera,
Yeah.
jumped in, because Littleton always put their money where their mouth was, and we're leaders in this. And of course, a great deal of this I attribute to the cooperation with Charlie Boston and his team, as well as South Suburban. It's been a great partnership.
Council, any questions? Bruce?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. Just a couple clarifications. When you build a trail, does any of the money that is put out for that trail get involved in the maintenance and upkeep, or is that turned over to South Suburban or
That's
whoever?
over to South Suburban. That's all the
We
district.
found out a long time ago that you can't raise money for maintenance. I'm not being facetious, but people want to see their money spent on the bells and whistles, on the beautiful 12-foot wide trail, or the whatever it may be, the amenities and the rest stops and so forth. That's why the partnership with South Suburban has been so meaningful, because they guarantee that what we build will be maintained, that it's not going to just be let go to seed and so forth. So it's a great partnership, that ability to guarantee that trail we build tomorrow will be maintained by South Suburban.
Also, you discussed the $55,000 annual operating budget that you have for marketing maps and those kinds of things. With the difficulty that you expressed with the grants not really wanting to fund the overhead costs, how have you been able to do that in the past, and how would you do it if you didn't get help in the future immediately?
Well, quite honestly, back when interest rates were a bit better, and through working with South Suburban and so forth, we had about $500,000 in the bank that was GOCO money, various monies that we had invested in Colo Trust, and we were making $4,000 or $5,000 a month in interest. Been the treasurer for 15 years, and when I just reconciled the September bank statement, Colo Trust statement, we got $24. So we built up, we used to have a situation where we would tell Julie and Bob, our consultants, go raise the money and you'll get paid. And then when that eventuality came where we were making that kind of, we made $150,000 over 3 or 4 years that we had a fund in which we could pay. The majority of that $55,000 goes to our consultants, goes to Julie to write grants and to do the things that bring more money in. But the grants come in and pay for the concrete and pay for the paving and pay for the whatever, and they don't give us any administrative money.
But with the creation of the database, which Bev was referring to, is the goal of the foundation is to reach out to individual donors, people who are out there using the trail. And we have increased that over the last several years. And we're part of Colorado Gives Day, which is on December 10th this year. So I don't think we're looking at all the cities to contribute to be our sole contributors. It needs to be a comprehensive fundraising effort and funds secured. So the percentage of individual donors, it averages about 12 to 16,000 a year through our individual donor campaign. And the goal of the database is as we increase the database, as we increase the communications and the marketing, then we will increase the individual donor support. Because there's over 1 million people who go on the South Platte River Trail.
And then just one other question. Your accessibility to Arapahoe County open space money, do you have to do that through a municipality?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we can't get that money direct.
Okay, thank you.
We did write, we have a grant in with them right now, the foundation, with the city of Littleton, who has partnered with us, thanks to Charlie and their staff. So we have an interpretive education program that we are implementing elements into our overall marketing campaign.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'll just give you another way in which the administrative costs used to be covered by the foundation. Up until just recent years, every time we'd get a grant in, we'd take a certain percentage of that and use it for administrative costs until they got on to us and said, wait a minute, we gave you that to build this trail or this bridge, not to pay in administrative costs. So in the past few years, we've not been able to do that, but it used to be that's one of the ways
We used to take 10,
funded.
our original modus operandi was to take 10% of any grants we got, where we could, i.e. GOCO says, you want the money, you spend it on trails, you can't take anything. Arapahoe County said the same thing. Littleton was kind enough for a number of years to allow us that, and subsequently that went down to 2%, and then basically we don't, those grants we don't depend on anymore for us.
And one more thing that's an additional administrative cost is our, the audit. As a 501c3, we have to adhere to certain state statutory rules as far as having an audit. And that is about 10 to 15% of our budget some years for an audit.
Audit insurance, we have to operate as a business, even though we're all volunteers.
Yeah. And this year, the last, 2012, we are now with the Colorado State Employee fundraising program. So a Colorado State employee can designate our organization. But just to set something like that up takes anywhere from 3 to 8 hours of my time and the paperwork. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but for 30 hours a month and with our operating budget covering all of this, it really sometimes, I'm very impressed with how the trustees run the foundation. It's very efficient.
We need to be realistic too. Even though we're building a database and we're getting our $10 and our $100 and our $50, that is never going to build trails. We get $10,000, $15,000 a year in donations from the general public. And, I mean, we've tried a lot of marketing efforts, and we spent a bit of money over there when we were pretty flush with all that interest money. We tried all kinds of direct mail campaigns, et cetera. And yes, it helped a little bit, but it's going to be the Littletons and the Clone Trees and the Inglewoods who really make it work if you want trails, additional trails built in the community. It's just there ain't no way that Joe Blow riding his bike out there is going to give us $100,000. I wish it was, but.
Other questions? Bruce?
So you mentioned the city ditch trail, and maybe talk a little bit more about the projects you foresee upcoming in the next 12 to 18 months, wish list kind of stuff. Do you have grants out for the city ditch or the community trail? And
Well, the City Ditch Community Trail, I wrote those grants, Arapahoe County, and I can't remember, Charlie could probably clarify, the GOCO money, but there is money for that trail, and we're just waiting on some, I think, right away, and I can't speak to the exact easement issues, but the money is there for the Littleton Community Trail, and that follows the city ditch, and it's going to be a crusher-fine trail. It's not going to be a hard surface multi-use because that's not what the community wanted. So some other thoughts that were given to me over the last several months were from residents in Littleton, and one was, and once again, I'm just throwing these out, but it would be, we would only do a project that had strong community support and was feasible and, you know, within our budget and all the partners involved. But a community member recommended the trail on the west side of the golf course, and that's in the master plan for the city of Littleton.
Oh, right.
I haven't even looked at that plan, so these were just thrown out. The east side of Trail near Mineral.
I'm sorry, generally, we don't decide that we're going to do a project. We don't drive down the street and say, oh, let's put a trail there.
Okay.
We responded, Charlie Boston came to us a few years ago and
Okay,
said.
so we're precipitating these.
And I'll give you,
I'm
last
with you.
month we were at Lone Tree, and Lone Tree has generously given us between $7,500 and $15,000 a year for a number of years, and we're quite a ways from our closest trail to Lone Tree.
Okay.
And their council said, well, what are we getting for our money? We had to come back and say, you have never asked us for anything. You've been very generous.
Okay.
We have a trustee from Lone Tree, but we went, oh, well, we'll get our act together.
We'll get a list to you.
Because what happens, the passion of a community, a group, whatever, of wanting a trail, wanting a park, wanting something, is what makes it happen. We have the facility to make 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 communities and groups, whatever, work together as kind of the neutral agency. And we have Julie who'll go say, okay, we'll go to GOCO, we'll go to here, and I was just reviewing the finances. We've had the Betcher Foundation, we've had the Denver Foundation, we've had the El Pomar. I mean, over the years, on and on and on, where somebody had a passion and said, you know, we can get some money from them. We can make this happen. We can write a grant. We had, in the early 90s, we had Lockheed Martin come to us and say, we've got a salt and sand dump sitting at the foot of our main drive. Looks terrible, belongs to the State Highway Department. They're willing to give it up. We need to raise $1 million. We'll give you a $250,000 challenge grant.
Okay.
And we raised that $250,000, and if you look at where the Audubon Society is today and that whole park area, part of Chatfield State Park, that was a partnership with Denver Water, Lockheed Martin, Jeff. This is the only thing we've ever done out of district, out of the South Suburban Park District. But state parks, on and on. Fun. Corps of Engineers, that's an interesting group to work with.
And going back to city ditch, then I understand. I appreciate the clarification. I know we've got some. I think we did some budget money for city ditch this year, and you're saying the combination of what we budgeted and what you have procured is just waiting for clarification or resolution of the easements and so forth and so on. But otherwise, it's good to go.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
But all the ditch is not going to be,
No,
the
no,
trail going to be done. It's in two segments.
Phases, yeah, no, I recall. Yeah, thank you.
So,
And thank you for the list of potential projects that are out there, and I've gone through that. If I have questions, not to necessarily take up everyone's time, but if I have questions about one of the projects or a couple of the projects on the list, who's the best to contact?
They call Julie.
Yeah, and we also, on our website, there's an email address, info@sspf.org,
Okay,
that you can call me.
will do.
We can get back to you about that.
Thank you.
So really what we're here for is a request, actually, for support and being able to continue the relationship that we've always had that's worked so well with Littleton, and to actually, continue to be your partner in having trails that work for Littleton. And, I mean, a huge number of the trails that we've done over the last 30 years occur in Littleton. And you've had an incredible benefactor, I guess, of a lot of the money that's come through. Sometimes I suppose people wonder, oh gosh, it's so busy now. But, isn't that a wonderful problem to have, in a way, if you build trails and people use them, which is always what we want to have happen. And a lot of what we're looking at, or could look at in the future, is how we can make those trails better, how we can add in other trails that allow for less traffic on one, maybe have a different user base that would be interested in the other. Certainly the community trail will not be something that bikes are going to be running down. That's probably going to be more of a pedestrian, dog walking, something along that line. So we have the capacity to do numerous trails and a lot of enhancements as well. And we really appreciate your support.
And on a closing note, thank you so much for addressing this issue. It's long overdue. Thank you so much.
okay. Any other questions? I guess I would just,
I'm taking it.
I have some concern over writing a $100,000 check that we have no idea what it's going to go for. I also have some concern that we wrote a $100,000 check in 2009 that's in your bank account and not ours. We have to be good guardians of our taxpayers' dollars. I think that what you guys do is great. And we are in a community that loves these trails, and they love them to be connected so that they can get around. Big Dry Creek was a great connection.
But you know, Deb, can I interrupt for a minute?
Sure.
That project took 15 years. It's not like we see a project and we want to do it. It took 15 years by the time we got through the right-of-ways, the easements, and all that. And we had to start from the east side and the west side and then just wait for that last section to come together. So it's not like we go out and do a project in 18 months. We can't. We don't have the funds for it.
Right.
But thank you for your help in that, too.
And I guess I would just ask is, I think, as you guys have said repeatedly, that Littleton's been a great partner and carried probably more than our fair share. And it's great to see getting some of these other cities involved. And I think that those of us that are in the Arapahoe County Open Space Shareback, there is a fund, and it is very protected. And you guys fit nicely into that for us, helping you with that fund, since you aren't part of the Shareback. So there's good money there. It's not, we're not pulling it out of our general fund. But what does it do to you if we're good, we're here, we've got an open space fund, and when you need money, you would come. When you have a plan, when you have a trail, when you have a spur that needs to be completed, and you know what it's going to cost, and a little bit more information, and come and say, this is where we're missing this much, and we'd like your help with this. is that something that you guys could work within your plan? I would feel more comfortable doing that and having that sort of relationship than to just annually give $100,000 and not know if it's going to be spent. And I can understand what happened with this bridge, and those things will happen. And of course, even on the Big Dry Creek, that budget went crazy as you guys started getting closer. There was some things that escalated and the costs went up, and I know we gave some extra money at that point. So those things will happen. But because we do have a good open-based relationship. So would that be a way that, without handcuffing you to work on some of these larger dollar amounts, does that work within your structure?
I think
Do
if we
that?
had a staff, that would work real well. We have Julie, okay? We don't have planners. And a lot of times, we need to have some seed money to begin projects too. And I understand your fiduciary responsibility to your constituents. I totally understand that. And I was at that meeting in 2009 when we were going to break ground for the Littleton Bridge, and Greenwood Village came out of the woodwork and said, we don't want that bridge here. And we went, okay, we're through. We stopped right then. And I think we've been very responsive to the needs of the communities. I don't know if we could do that, Deb. I'm not sure.
I mean,
I think one reason that this year we requested the 100,000 was with this grant process. And my understanding, just from the fundraising standpoint, was this was kind of our one time to come to Littleton because it was part of this community grant proposal process. So I guess my question
Yeah,
is,
let me go on that. That
And that,
is
I
right,
think,
but
might
that's
have
a
been-
different budget. That's a
Okay.
general fund.
Okay.
Your money will come out of the open
mean,
space budget. So
if
that
open
is
space
not
money is
based
always
on our
available,
annual.
and it's not just during your budgetary process. I mean, I understand
Just to give you guys an example of how they even handled it within the city is they did not appropriate money to the staff for projects that wouldn't happen. The only thing they actually appropriated, from my recollection, was for the early phase of the Littleton Community Trail. And other than that, they said to us, come back to us when you have a project. So as opposed to this year where they appropriated about $1.2 million, I'm not talking like you guys aren't sitting right here, I apologize.
So noted.
Thank you, Counselor.
just take notes on that.
But so they changed their methodology even within the city organization to say, come back to us when we have that project, rather than appropriating it and then us coming back if there is acquisition and ordinance required for the purchase of it. So I mean, these guys can obviously chime in, but I think the shift of we're going to keep those dollars not appropriated and we're going to keep them within the fund balance until there's something real. And when you have something real, we're all for the conversation, but it's a shift of approach for it. So, and we're going to obviously work within that because that's the direction of the council, of our policymakers. So I think this is a shift that we're seeing just in terms of their budgeting approach.
Yeah. So the good thing about our open space is because it's so designated as to what we can use it for. And we have, throughout the years, had requests come in. We're doing the river restoration project, and that was a midterm request. We did also approve it. I think that was one of the other things we approved out of the open space this year. But it doesn't fall into that tight budget thing where we have to approve the budget, which we've already done, and that's where that other money comes from. So you guys kind of go to a different category.
Okay.
So it's a little bit friendlier, I think, because it works better with how you work too. You know, oh, we need it, well, come on down and talk to us.
I think for the administrative money, that is money that we would we would like to find out soon
Okay.
about that.
Yeah.
Just, well, no, listen, it's not, you gave a higher percentage than what.
I still would like to.
I saw it, but, I mean, we're already planning things for the spring, like our annual trail cleanup, which I know several of you have participated in. I recognize many of your faces, and the tree planting projects. Those things, as you know, are 6 to 12 months in advance. And, for marketing and coordination and food, and if you want to do corporate sponsors, anything like that, we need to plan the budget for 2014. As far as the 100,000 for the open space share back fund, maybe Jim, I don't know. I'm
Open
not
space
a
share back's a
voting
whole
trustee member, so.
We have to partner with a city or a district to get the open space. We can't do
With
it
the project.
ourselves.
Right.
What's the project?
With a project. We
Yeah,
can't do it
that's what you
ourselves.
said.
No, we partner with you guys on those. I think we're working on, like you said, one right now. So would this be acceptable to you if we, because we can vote this evening, since we have a special meeting. So if we were to make a motion to appropriate the $20,000 and see where that went, and then without doing anything on the 100,000, understanding that when you guys, when there's a plan or a little bit more concrete, that you are more than welcome to come to any of our meetings, get on the agenda. Okay,
We don't,
okay, okay,
that makes a lot of sense.
okay. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
So we have a motion to appropriate $20,000.
With a
For the
second.
120,000, was that right, Bruce?
What she said.
$20,000 to the South Suburban Foundation, and I have a second.
Yes.
Roll call vote. Wendy?
Mayor Brinkman,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallman,
Aye.
Councilmember Beckman,
Yes.
Councilmember Cernanik,
Aye.
Councilmember Cole,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor,
Yes.
Okay,
motion carries.
you got your money.
Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
Thank you so much, and I
Thanks for
appreciate
coming.
it.
We greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we'll take 5 minutes while we shift seats with our friends from South Suburban.
Here, right, am I supposed to?
working? Hello? Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, we're gonna get started.
All right. Everyone, who are we missing? Jim? Yeah. Everybody else? Do we have the whole board?
No, Mike Anderson is.
Okay.
Where's John?
Okay. So we are going to get started. Before we do, John needs to call his meeting to order.
Yes, on behalf of our board, this evening we have Sue Rosser, Pam Eller, and Scott LeBreche here with us, and I need to call to order our special meeting of Tuesday, October 22nd, 2013. So we are in a special session with the Littleton City Council.
Perfect. Okay, this is a presentation by Alta regarding a program that was originally called Happy Trails. I think many of you saw an early draft of the program, Happy Trails. It was a program based primarily on creating a educational and informational and somewhat enforceable effort to create a environment on the trails that became, was a little bit more friendly. We've seen some changes in behavior on the trails over the last number of years based on the quantity and amount of people that are enjoying them, and a diversity of types of use of the trails too. Seeing all kinds of new gadgets and gizmos out there these days. So this is an effort to create throughout the stretch of the Mary Carter, to kind of share this information. We put together 3 substantial events or areas where on one weekend where we had booths set up, and there was giveaways and information on shorter leashes for your dogs, and we gave leashes and bells for bikes and helmets and safety for kids on bikes, etc. So all of this went on. Alta has been working on a report, kind of a summary of what that event culminated in, what that looked like, and then some additional information that they've been working on in terms of trail usage and options for some additional trail safety. So this is kind of a closing report in terms of the work that you've been. When did we start with you guys? Was it like April?
In April, yes.
April, okay. So I will go ahead and turn it over to you to run through. You have PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Okay.
Josh Malin with Alta Planning and Design. Like the Mayor said, we were hired in about April to do kind of a report that looks at 5 E's: education, encouragement, evaluation, enforcement and encouragement. And so the idea was to come up with a kind of a share the path campaign, but also balance that with looking at ideas for future infrastructure improvements, and then also looking at a way to start collecting long-term data on the trail to see how many users are on the trail and what they're using the trail for. So what we started to find out was whether they're using the trail for recreation, health, and exercise, commuting, fitness training. There's a lot of people using the trail in this section right now, and that's based on the preliminary trail counts that we did over 4 days in September. So kind of a quick overview of what we're going to talk about in this presentation is what were the objectives of the projects, what are some of the results with the safety event, the trail counts, and the trail user surveys. Then also some preliminary recommendations, and these are preliminary. We want to get people's feedback and make sure that they're what people want to see. And then kind of the next steps. What do you guys do with this information, and which pieces of these recommendations do you want to move forward? So first, kind of what Mayor said is create an education campaign for the Mary Carter Greenway Trail that could be broadened, if wanted, to other communities, adjacent communities, that would create an awareness of trail use behavior etiquettes. And so one of the reasons we started this was because we heard that there was a lack of courtesy on the trail amongst user groups. The next was to provide a methodology to collect long-term and short-term data, both numbers and user surveys. So what do people like out there? What aren't they liking? That type of thing. And then also to look at providing some short-term and long-term infrastructure improvements that could help make the trail more friendly for users, more comfortable for the users, and for the different user groups. And then also to provide strategies to continue to encourage courteous trail behavior. I think that's the main thing, is I think if you really want people to look at what the rules and regulations are on the trail, you need to provide education and encourage them to follow those rules. So first, like Mayor Brinkman said, we had one large event that was at 3 different locations: Big Dry Creek, Mary Carter Greenway Trail, Confluence, Carson Nature Center, and then also at Reynolds Landing. And the idea was to actually meet with people and talk to them about the rules and regulations of the trail. And just a few photos from the event, we did see about 500 users just at those 3 locations. So in one day, that's a pretty good measuring stick of touching people in one day. And then also, the idea was to provide them with education and encouragement materials that they could take home, or just talk to staff members and team members about what are the proper rules of using the trail. And this is one of the signs we kind of came up with. We came up with 6 different signs. The ideas with the signs were where we met with stakeholders early on, and we found out what people's concerns were with trail behavior on the trail. So we came up with 6 or 7 of these different signs that kind of were promoted along the trail. And as you can see, we did temporary trail signs on the bottom right. And the idea is that these are being moved around currently through South Suburban Parks and Recreation District. And people are seeing these on a daily basis, and they're being moved every couple of weeks, so people don't just kind of see those trails and those signs and start to ignore them. The next piece of the phase was, along with the event, was that we did a trail count. So we did 4 days of trail counts, 2-hour periods, and then we did them all at Carson Nature Center just to have a consistent location. We recommend doing trail counts at least once a year, but also providing permanent trail counts that are being conducted every single day by automated trail counters. But the idea was to just get a basis to see how many people are using the trail in this section. And from just the initial trail count, and this is just one of the sheets we use when we're out there, but 63% of the users out there are cyclists. And so when you think about 2/3 of your population using the trail are cyclists, you start to think about how do we cater to those cyclists? Do we cater to pedestrians? And a little bit of both has been done with the implementation of the dual trail out there. So we also looked at, were people wearing helmets? Were people not wearing helmets? How many people were walking? How many people were running? Were they inline skating? Were they walking their dog? And then we also looked at northbound and southbound direction. And again, these trails were done like this person was just showing an example, is you sit at one location and watch people go by and count them both in northbound and southbound directions. And what we did find, which is pretty typical, is on the weekends they are the highest because if people are recreating and they have more time to use the trail. And then about 55% are men compared to women on the trail. And based on a project we were working on with transportation engineers, this initial estimate was about 1 million users a year on the trail based on these numbers. And these numbers were extrapolated from a formula that has been created over time that looks at the monthly usage along a trail. And so we have an idea of when trails are being used and how many people are using those trails. And we also collected data from CDOT at Ken Carl and C470 and also from Chatfield State Park that helped us extrapolate these numbers so we could adjust our numbers based on nearby trails that see similar types of volumes. So again, we only counted 1,500 people initially in 4 counts, but with those numbers we can start to get an idea or just at least paint a picture of what's happening along the trail. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how do we know that the north and south people weren't the same people, like they went up the trail and then came back?
That's an assumption.
Yeah, so I'm
correct.
just making sure.
So the number could be half of that.
And then in terms of the 1,077,000 users, they might all be the same people every day, right, theoretically. I'm sure they're not, but it's not so much users as use
Just
usages,
Trail
right?
numbers, yep, exactly.
Right.
Trail numbers, not the actual user, but
Yeah,
the trail
yeah.
numbers, exactly.
And it would be neat somehow to maybe stop people if they'd ever stop and ask, how often a week do you use or
And we did that
whatever.
with the trail user surveys. So
Okay.
we'll get a little bit into that next. So
Thank you.
That's a nice segue.
Thanks.
So at the same time we were doing the trail counts, we also did surveys both online for a month with a Survey Monkey, and also we did trail counts at Carson Nature Center along the trail there.
Just a real quick question, Josh, on some of the counting.
Yep.
If I'm pulling a trailer with my grandson and I'm on a bike, are we 2 users or 1
Two
user?
users. Yep. So in the survey, we had almost 200 responses. Basically, it came from 9 cities around Colorado, 1 in Tennessee, 1 person were visiting from Tennessee, 6 different counties. But in general, the people that were coming to Carson Nature Center were pretty close to this area that accessed that trail. We did have some people that came from Denver Metro and rode down and took the survey as well. But in general, it was a pretty tight ring around the city of Littleton. And then, like you're saying, the majority of trail users use it more than 4 times a month. And 94% of the people that we asked, with the current facilities, with the dual path and the hard surface path right now and the trail access, people are happy with the facilities that are out there. 73% of the people thought people on the trail were using good etiquette and calling their paths. The next is some of the trail behaviors that people were concerned about, which were some of the things we targeted with the temporary signs, were cyclists going past the 15-mile-an-hour speed limit, people not walking their dogs on a short leash or no leash at all, and then people using electronic devices on the trail. And then also, 93% of the people are satisfied with the experience they get along the Mary Carter Greenway Trail. Some of the improvements that desired, maybe more wayfinding and signage, so people know where they are. And there is some wayfinding and signage out there. That's what those pictures are showing. But sometimes they're inconsistent in location, so maybe updating some of the wayfinding signs. Also, maybe widen the path in sections where this is the concrete path, not the crusher fines path, but maybe in sections where it's appropriate, make it a little bit wider as improvements need to be done. It may not need to be done, we're just going to widen the path to 12 or 14 feet. I mean, that's a pretty big dollar amount, so we understand that that's not feasible right off the bat. The next thing would be to look at enforcing speed limits for bicyclists along the trail. And we'll get to some recommendations on how that may be done, because there are some ideas that kind of fall on the fence whether they work or not. And the next thing, why do people are out on the Mary Carter Greenway Trail? Natural beauty was the #1 thing. To be in a quite urban area, to be able to come to a section, especially with South Platte Park, people really like the idea of feeling like they are in nature. And then the access to the larger network of trails, just what the South Suburban Park Foundation was talking about, you can access many, many miles of trails without getting on a roadway around here. So that was a big thing they looked at. And then they thought it was really well maintained. And then we started, the event was done in June, end of June, and the signs had been out along different sections of the trail since June. And in the survey, we found that 55% of users knew about the campaign and had seen the signs or seen it in the Littleton Report or on Facebook page or through Twitter. So these are a couple more signs that are up there now and are being rotated. So some of the ideas to help people understand the rules. Recommendations. The idea is to continue to do safety events, and this can be done in all different types of ways. It can be done along the trail, or it can be, we can go to festivals, or like, for example, the Littleton Criterion was the first year this year. There could be a booth there at South Suburban Parks in the city of Littleton, or even at one of the bicycle shop owners' tables where they could have some of the rules and regulations and some of the stuff they can hand out. They could also be done at the Western, Welcome Western Days. There could be this could be continued to be handed out and developed. Also, the other thing that we talked about is local bike shops. Maybe a good thing to do is provide them with collateral, and then with every bike sale, they could provide users, bicyclists, or somebody or runners with some sort of collateral that lets them know what the rules and regulations are. Also, Bike Month is a good way to. More and more communities are coming up with Bike Month or Bike Day. Provide an energizer. They call them energizer stations. The top right. The idea is to provide that collateral. Keep hitting the people with this collateral and letting them know what the rules and regulations are. So if we continue to hit them with it, they're going to start to, even if it's ringing a bell, some people don't feel comfortable calling their pass, but they feel comfortable ringing a bell, so giving them different opportunities to learn the rules. Again, continue the media campaign for more than just one season. If you stop after one season, it's just kind of one and done, so you need to continue the campaign for 2 to 3 years. The campaign could change faces a little bit too, but again, it's an education campaign. If we want to target one user, we can do that with the campaign, but it's continually hitting them over the head with the rules and regulations. The next one is, and again, this is based on funding, what we just were talking about in the previous session, but hire or employ an event assistant. So this takes a lot of time, as South Suburban and City of Littleton communication directors can, just doing one event takes a lot of their actual operating time that they should be working on other things. So whether it's an intern or working with local universities or communities or community members, have them help out with these events and organize those events if possible. The idea is a volunteer ambassador program. Again, you're getting people that are willing to volunteer and help out with these type of events. So having the event assistant can help organize or run the volunteer ambassador program as well, to take some of the stress off of staff on both City of Littleton and South Suburban. So I think that's one thing. And the next is, they're out we noticed at Carson Nature Center, there's a wildlife report. So if you see some sort of wildlife, you can make a report of what you saw. So maybe providing locations along the trail where people can fill out a form if there was an accident, if there was an incident, or a near miss, so we start to understand what the crash data is out there. One of the things we looked at was talking to the City of Littleton Police and even the rangers at South Suburban Parks, and there's just not that much data to support and where improvements could be made if there's a dangerous section on the trail. So we don't really know how many crashes are happening along there. So start to collect that data. Again, not just short-term. So these are images of long-term counters. They can be put right in the trail. The one on the top right is on the Clear Creek Trail. And the idea is it can count different types of users. It can count pedestrians and bicycles and horses. And they typically will have a 2-year battery life. And the idea is they can be permanent or they can be moved around. So you can really start to understand what your actual numbers are. And that's one thing that I think that people have a question about, is that million users is a pretty high number. But if you go down to Chatfield, the numbers we got from the state park was 250,000 users. So there could be a large drop-off at C470 where they're taking different trails and not going in this Chatfield State Park. So understanding the whole section of the trail is important, and that can help you identify where you want to make infrastructure improvements or even safety improvements or target your campaigns. So I think that's an important thing to remember, is that looking at counters along the trail that are permanent, because it counts every day, every 15 minutes. And so then when you provide one of these things, they give you a data package that allows you to see what the fluctuation in use is, both during the day and over the course of the year. Some other recommendations: trail cross sections. So in general, where trails need to be improved, we recommend, based on the numbers, going to a 12 to 14 foot wide path. There's two sides of that. Some people think if you provide more room, people will go faster. I truly believe that they're going to go as fast as they can, no matter how wide the trail is. People can go a certain speed based on their physical capabilities. But again, widen it. And the other thing is looking at providing a section just for pedestrians, 4 to 5 feet wide on the hard surface, and then providing a bicycle, contraflow bicycle way on the concrete. And then these are just a couple areas of concern that were identified when we did a trail ride with the staff from South Suburban and City of Littleton, looking at areas where there could be some engineering infrastructure. For example, the bridge at the north side of the South Platte Park or the Aspen Grove neighborhood, maybe making that approach to the bridge a little straighter so people can see the bridge and if someone's on the bridge before they actually get on it. Then also at Prince Street, where the trail comes in, maybe looking at providing an improvement that brings people to a 90-degree turn when they come to the trail, so it actually slows them down. There was a fatality close to that area a couple years back, so providing them infrastructure improvements that open up sight lines and allow people to be safer when they're on the trail. And then also thinking about putting stop signs or yield bars or something that is a little more of warning signs on the trail. And then some of the other things that we talked about is possible trail connections close to Hudson Gardens along the Columbine Valley Golf Course. If you can, like they did on the Cherry Creek Trail, they've separated uses on two sides, pedestrians on one side, bicycles on another side. If you can get a whole section along the west side for a trailer, there's an opportunity to separate uses. And then you might reduce conflicts between bicycles and pedestrians. There's opportunities along there. There's spur trail connections to Oxford, to Bellevue, and also in Bowles where there's some to make the connectivity to the local neighborhoods and the local areas a little more friendly so they can access from their homes. Enforcement ideas. So the idea is these movable speed display signs. So what we've seen in recent studies, and the reason I'm showing a happy and a sad face, is because a lot of data is now beginning to come out with these trail signs that show if you put a sign out that says I'm going 15 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour, gives you your speed. A lot of people will actually speed up to see how fast they can go. But again, if you can collect data that when people are speeding in that area with that type of sign, you can start to look at infrastructure improvements that make sense. So you're actually collecting data, and that's the one thing we heard from South Suburban and Littleton is, what data do you have to support these infrastructure improvements? And the idea is to start to collect the data, and that's why we started doing trail counts and trail surveys, because then you can start to build a foundation for these improvements to occur. So to make it fun, if you're speeding, put a frown. If you're not, give them a happy face. Also, regulatory and warning signs and wayfinding signs. You can put stuff if you don't want vertical signs, because we don't want to litter the whole trail with vertical signs out there. That was a concern we heard. You can do pavement markings on the ground that says 15 mile an hour speed limit, slow down here, crossing, all kinds of different types of facilities you can do on the ground. But again, these are just again some wayfinding signs that are out that are good examples of helping people navigate through this long section. Other infrastructure improvements. I have one trail and one roadway example. The idea is in these long straight sections, if we know that people are speeding in those sections, looking at things called chicanes or even fencing that function like a ski area basically. So the idea is that when people come to an area and we want them to slow down, they have to slow down and go through a kind of an idea of a obstacle course basically, and they could be temporary or permanent. So there's ideas where this has been implemented, and also positive citations. If we don't want to give tickets, we don't want people to give tickets right off the bat. Maybe you hand out free coffees or free rounds of golf or whatever is the flavor of the day, if you will. But the idea is to try to encourage it first. I know there was some concern about giving tickets right off the bat and saying, well, that's kind of a bad idea for the trail and South Suburban parks. I don't know if we want to start giving people tickets for riding too fast. Again, warnings first and then maybe tickets. This is kind of a funny picture that I found. The guy was probably going a little too fast, so I got a ticket. And then also volunteer patrols. Volunteer patrols, again, you have to coordinate volunteers, so it's a lot of time and effort. So again, you need to think about that up front. But the idea is that, maybe they're the ones giving positive citations. Hey, thanks for following your pass. Thanks for following the speed limit. So those are the people that might be able to do these positive citations. So there's different ways you can utilize the volunteer patrols. So, and the next steps, I think this is just kind of to wrap it up and then ask all the questions you want. But understand that there's two agencies working here, and sometimes there's going to be differences of opinions. So what do you guys can come together, what can you work together on that you're both comfortable with? I think that's the big thing, because there's going to be some people that want to give tickets, and there's going to be some people that want to do nothing and think the trail is functioning by itself. And from the initial trail user surveys, people are pretty happy with what's happening out there. So in general, that's all I have for now. And there is some more stuff in the actual draft of the report.
Anybody have any questions?
Oh, actually, I wanted to address a few things. Jim Pretty gave me something from Scott Latona. So there was one recommendation to think about a Crusher Finds Trail near Cooley Lake. And so that was just one of the things we heard from staff. That might be a good idea to provide another trail over there. He doesn't think that is a good idea just based on wildlife habitat and impact to that area. So that's one thing. And then also he asked about the trail use number, so we kind of addressed that a little bit. And then he was asking about the next count periods. And really, there's typically one short-term count period, and that's mandatory is in September. And then there's 3 other counts that can happen throughout the year if you want to get more short-term and trail user survey data. So those are just optional. Those don't need to happen. And then also, just about training. The easiest thing right now, since the automated counters are so accurate and collect all different types of data, is to spend money on an automated counter. I mean, that's probably the best way that you're going to get the numbers. What you don't get is you don't get your stakeholder feedback. And so that's the idea, is that, you know, if you think about keeping this campaign going for a year and 1 million users is accurate, you're actually touching 500,000 users a year just by having temporary signs out there. So that's another thing to think about. And then also, he was asking about the volunteer patrols. You know, who would manage those people? And again, that's definitely a decision if it wants to be moved forward or not. So, I mean, we know those are time intensive at a staff level, but they can be very, very helpful and very useful. Thank you. Yep. Sorry.
I will just make one brief comment that we do have a South Platte Park task force that we've put together. It's, South Suburban and the City of Littleton are working on a kind of a rewrite of the management plan, doing some considerations for a lot of what we've talked about here and then some other things. So that's kind of in process. And I think that a lot of what you've given us here is stuff that will be very helpful for that task force, because it's a lot of the same things that they're considering, which will come back as recommendations to both boards for ratification probably next year. So this, I think, is going to be a great, helpful document for them for that. Okay, does anybody have any questions or comments? Jim?
When you make a comment about stop signs along the trail, I think that that's going to be obeyed just about as frequently as stop signs do on the streets for bicyclists. And it, to me, just becomes more sign pollution, because there is going to be ignored probably 99.9% of the time. I am a little concerned about T-type intersections, too. I understand about the slowing it down. But in the places in where the T intersections could occur, could be in places that if you don't get stopped or get turned or slowed down enough to turn, you could end up in the river, which is not what we would want. Particularly if you're coming off some of those, what I think are very needed connections with streets. There's a number of those, you identified some, but there's a number of those that I think would be a great help to the neighborhood to have better connections from the street down to the trails.
Right.
And extension of the Crusher Fine Trail. You showed pictures there of habit paths that are there. That
right.
And those need to be converted to crusher fines, because people are going to walk out there. They don't want to compete with the bicyclists. They
Right.
want to be able to walk on a trail separate from that. And looking at putting in more crusher fine extensions would be good.
Okay.
Unless I'm confused, I think that
Get a little closer to the microphone, Pam.
Oh, sorry.
Please.
So, unless I'm confused, the example you gave of possibly adding a west side trail at the Columbine Valley area, I don't understand how that would work, because there's a very short stretch in there, and then you come into the park and you'd have to have a bridge back over the river, and that would be a very expensive undertaking.
Correct.
Okay.
I agree.
But there have already been some conversations about that, Pam.
Yes, there have, and there are some people that are not very happy about it.
I think that's, again, kind of some of the things we heard from staff. And but the other thing about that, I think, again, is if looking at possibly with some of the other improvements that are happening, like closer to the drop sections near the recycle plant, or the car, where all the cars are, there's some extensions that are happening there as well. So looking at a segment of this trail where could be one of the busiest in the area, where you can separate users. So, because that was one of the things that we heard quite a bit, is there a way to separate users?
Well, and that has been a goal of South Suburban for quite some time on trail development, is to have an east and west side is wherever it was possible.
Right. And I think that, that section, from what we understand, is very difficult because it is a section where the golf course doesn't want to provide any easement, and they don't want to provide any right-of-way, so it might just be a long-term conversation, whether it goes anywhere.
Other questions? Bruce?
That's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Sue, please.
I'm just wondering, I think there would be roughly two kinds of users of this trail. The number one ones are the ones that aren't aware that they should ring a bell or they need to be reminded of the rules, and then they would be very happy and compliant. But I know there are definitely people in there who are riding very fast, and they're either doing that app that you told us about a while back.
Stravia.
What is it called?
Stravia.
Yeah, Stravia. Or they're just making time. And I'm wondering if you have interviewed many of them. I mean, I don't think this campaign is going to be one where they really frankly care without an enforcement piece, without tickets or something. But I'm just wondering if you interviewed some of those people to just ask them.
Well, we did in the trail surveys, especially at Carson Nature Center. We tried to focus on half hikers, half walkers, but that wasn't always who was around. And the people that are the spandex group that are probably going faster than 15, their kind of ideas. I mean, some of them said, let's raise the trail speed to 30. This is an uninterrupted section of road or trail or whatever you want to call it that doesn't have any cars on it, so we feel safe along here. So, their viewpoint is much different than the other people that are out just going 10 miles an hour with their kids or with their families. So you have completely two different theories, but they also understood the value of having a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit. And when you mention tickets to them, they say, "Well, that would be dumb. Why would you do that?" And you just have two different mentalities. And I think Charlie had it pretty good. He said something to the extent of, there's 50% of the people that follow the law out there. There's 25% that are interested in following the law, and if you encourage them, maybe they will. And there's 25 that don't care about it, and that's probably what you have out there. But in general, I think if you can get to that 75% level, I think it's a pretty good piece, and hopefully you don't. The other thing we did hear a lot of people are both bicycle users and walkers or joggers. So you have a mixture of people out there that don't always follow the law when they're on bicycles, but they follow the law when they're walking or running. So I don't know I don't have an answer to how do you capture people and say slow down unless you do enforce it.
Bruce?
Yeah, I think that's from your standpoint, I think that what you just said is a very practical comment. I mean, I don't think you're going to get 100% compliance. I was going to go back to the signs, and I think the idea of the movable signs is good. But one thing that we talked about the day we had the event out there was the signs are actually, to me, they were good signs, but they were too small. And the colors, we also tended to blend in. They're green and gray, even though if there was a way to make them more vibrant and bigger so that people could get the message and then you're moving them around. I mean, it's sort of a nit comment, but it was just a practical issue because somebody who zips by isn't going to slow down to read the small sign.
Right. Okay.
Jim?
To me, the bells are a little bit of a problem because I don't always hear the bells, but I do hear people telling me they're going to pass me on the left or right, which happens to be going. And I have seen some people that have a single earpiece. And then if they ring a bell, it's just a musical tone to them. So they don't know it's even coming at all until the bicyclist is whizzed past them. The second thing is the city has an ordinance on these retractable dog leashes as not being legal. I believe the Park Foundation, the South Suburban Park District also has rules for their parks and trails that they are not legal either. So I think a big campaign needs to go on about how you're going to retrain humans to get rid of those retractable leashes.
Talk to the manufacturers about that.
Phil and then Bruce.
Real quick, just wanted to raise the issue of wayfinding signs, because it's not just an issue around the trail and the information around the trail, but what we've been trying to do that, longer term, we're looking to also be complementary to the bike and the river in looking at this. And one of the things that's important is people know how to get there and get off. And I've come across folks on a Saturday morning in downtown Littleton that have gotten there that started in Denver somewhere, and they said, we didn't even know it was here.
Right.
Bruce.
I'm just thinking about, our goal is to encourage behavior or change behavior. And I'm thinking, and it's just an observation, that taking this one relatively the big picture, small stretch of trail and trying to do something there that may not be enforced anywhere else. Coming out of Denver, hitting Littleton might be the first time that they experience any enforcement, and all those trails connect. So they've been on the Highline Canal or name them whatever the east-west trails might be also. So my observation is, could we have an area where specifically we're interested, which is this, but a wider area that we have an interest in, that maybe we could build up some of these modification changes? Could we work with some kind of modification along the trails that South Suburban has, South Suburban wide, maybe incrementally something small? And could we maybe work with down to Chatfield or north up toward Englewood and Sheridan, beyond there, north, with something like a speed limit, just something that might, so that we would have the benefit of behaviors that have already adapted by the time they get to this area.
And that was one of the things that came up in the stakeholder meetings, was that if you're coming, like you said, from Denver or from somewhere else, how do they know what the rules and regulations are if they change from municipality to municipality? And that's just continually coordinating with your adjacent municipalities. And then, there's simple things, not simple things, but there's, again, with wayfinding and signage, where you can actually create signs where you come into Littleton, for example, if you wanted to, or if you want to do South Suburban wide, you could provide a pier or some sort of monumentation that says you're in South Suburban, the speed limit is 15 miles an hour on the trail or something. I don't know if that's what you're...
Yeah, and just one further comment. Since we already put concrete down, that's not really too natural. I'm thinking you put paint on concrete, that just like you would if it was I-95 this way and, C-470 that way. Well, I don't know, makes them slick or what, I don't know what. But if there's something that you could do that, because people's heads are down on the trail, that's what they're looking at.
Yeah, you'll need to come and do,
David, you need a microphone.
you'll need to go to a mic, Dave.
Thank you. I just want to say a couple of things. The mayor mentioned earlier that we formed a task force. We've already had a meeting with the city staff and the South Suburban staff, and we've had a subcommittee to work on the signage issue. They've been meeting to talk. And I think a lot of the things we're hearing tonight, we'll talk about in the task force, what can be done on the short term, what can be done on the longer term. So Josh will be out of the picture as a consultant, and this will be turned over to our task force to implement some of the recommendations. So we'll be taking notes on all your comments. The other thing I was going to mention is we already are going to allocate more of our park rangers to South Platte Park. We heard the discussion, we heard some of the problems, and they'll be spending more time down there. And then Jim Purdy and the Parks and Trails Department is going to put a couple of bicycle patrols this summer on the trail to try to do some of the enforcement. There'll be paid staff. We tried for 2 years and with the foundation to do volunteers, and that never worked. So we'll have a couple people out there this summer at key times to try to do some enforcement. So I think we're making progress, and I think the report has given us something to look at, and we'll continue meeting with the city staff to see what can be done. Thank you.
Yeah, I think a couple of things that really jumped out at me in this report. 93% of the respondents are satisfied with their trail experiences on Mary Carter Greenway. That's a pretty high satisfaction rate. And the other 7%, I don't know if we'll ever convince them that it's a good experience or be able to spend enough money to make it a good experience for them. The other thing, 73% of respondents believe that people who use the trail use good etiquette. What I'd like to see us really focus on is to continue surveying the users to find out, are those numbers really right or just a very small sample that happened to turn out that way? We can throw all kinds of money about doing stuff in the trail, but if the satisfaction rate doesn't go up or is already so high we aren't going to increase it, then is it really dollars well spent? But so I think we need to continue to survey our users and really make sure we've got valid statistics when we start looking at these things.
Peggy?
So piggybacking on that, John, it'd be good to survey at different seasons. When there's snow all over the place and the plow has gone over the cement, if you're walking or jogging, you probably have to be on the sidewalk because you've got all this snow otherwise. And there are people who will go there to walk and jog who otherwise go elsewhere in the city, but those trails aren't plowed or whatever. So it increases some of that use. So the satisfaction when at different seasons might be important to look at.
Oh, very likely, yes. But I think that's where we need to put some money, is continuing these surveys and find out really what is a good, valid statistic as far as satisfaction and people following etiquette. I think we can increase that etiquette number some above 73%, and that's going to come through education.
We were recently at the National Recreation and Park Association conference, and one of the vendors there was demonstrating a system that was fairly inexpensive that used, what are those little things called that you can click on your phone, the picture?
App?
Yeah. I'm not tech savvy, but anyway, and they would, the way they were marketing them is that they could be placed anywhere, and it would be like sending an instant message. So you could text something in once you had logged on to this, that you just saw somebody going 100 miles an hour on the trail, or you saw somebody hit a pedestrian and take off, or something like that. And with GPS, you could figure out exactly where it was. Because it's instant, you knew when it was. And then you'd also have captured that person's contact information so you could follow up with it. So there's possibility for technology out there that would maybe even give us some more precise data on exactly what's going on and where and when on the trail.
Yeah. Thank you. Piggybacking on what Pam was saying about the National Congress, I went to a couple regional trails sessions, and it doesn't sound, I don't think we're the first to have these kind of issues. So when you start going through and you did this and the recommendations, did you reach out to any other communities, municipalities, to see what they have done for these, or for these same types of issues that we're dealing with here?
We referenced a couple of the studies that we have done that did reach out to other municipalities, and very similar things that are happening.
Okay, because we went to, one of the sessions was on the Monon Trail, which is in Indianapolis, and in Chicago. And basically, every time they were going through and talking about issues, they're the same issues we're having. And they're going through the same type of, they've tried to put in pieces to fix some of the issues, and I'm just kind of curious if we could kind of leverage other municipalities and such, so.
Yeah,
We could look at that for the
don't
following
reinvent the
board.
wheel. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. Other people have done it before us, so.
Yep.
Michael?
I just want primarily the council to know, but also certainly South Suburban folks, the city's in the process of getting an app for the general public to be able to respond or communicate to us potholes, speeders, be they on bikes or anything, and just notify us generally of anything that we throw, graffiti, and the whole wide variety of things. And so we're reviewing different software vendors that provide that that tool. And so we'll have something, hopefully by, I don't want to speak for IS, but certainly first quarter, maybe second quarter at the latest, we'll have something in place. So for the next spring season, it could be in place to the extent that people download the app and then utilize it.
So notify who with it, Public Works or?
It would. It's a global communication tool, so it completely depends upon what you're communicating to us, and it would automatically route to the appropriate division within the city, because it's well beyond this conversation. I mean, it's really everything from I just have a complaint, I don't want to voice it, to there's a pothole in front of my house, to I have a neighbor with whatever. So it'll be all inclusive.
Okay. Thank you very much for all your work on this, and I think that the combination of what Be Cool Share the Path brought and what our task force is working on, we're going to have a pretty good plan. I also completely agree that this is a program that we need to do on an annual basis. I think we need to be very conscientious at this point that we should be out there at least a couple of times this in 2014 with some level of effort. We had talked about doing an enforcement weekend, different things like that. So we need to start some planning on that and make sure that we get our 2014 put together for that. And yes, that's about it. But thank you so much, Josh and team. Appreciate all your work on this.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you. So South Suburban Board, stay here at the table. We're going to have a presentation from Laura Kroger from Urban Drainage and Flood Control District on our South Platte River plan, an update on our restoration projects, etc. So come on up. Do you need the overhead and stuff? Okay. You can go ahead and get that fixed up. And
Extra copies of this? Are there any extra?
do you want just one?
We're going to get it electronically for you.
Do you want?
No, I was just going to let, we have a foundation board meeting coming up. Here.
We can make copies.
I think Jim. Okay.
I can wait for the electronic.
That's what I was looking for.
I was thinking, can I rotate this?
I just realized I wasn't speaking into the microphone.
That's okay.
John's got your mind.
I got so much respect here. I feel like Rodney Dangerfield.
When it was time to grab a mic, I just knew I could grab yours.
Oh, there you go. I've been relatively quiet. For me.
Yes, for you.
It is.
I don't know who's going to do the most talking.
I don't know where that wayfinding, but I mean, I just couldn't resist that. People come down, they all of a sudden, we didn't know this was here. I've
Where
had
are
that
they
happen 3
coming
times.
from?
Tennessee.
Oh. Well, I go down to Denver, and I didn't know that was there. I didn't know Denver was there.
You are fast.
It's not quite the same, Dad. I think so. Come on. I'm not biting on that one.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I think that's, it's not a trail or a route that is right up against the highway. Right up against the highway or something. I mean, it gets tucked back in and.
I used to commute to Denver on the trail all the way in. And it was like, oh, there's a neighborhood bar here. I mean, it was like, I found that on the way home. Not on the way to the office.
All right. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started, get back up again. Okay, so Laura, grab a mic.
I think I'm hooked up.
Oh, you are? Okay, great. Okay, is that all right? Okay, awesome. It's yours.
Thank you.
Get to a microphone though, quick, because we're broadcasting.
She's got one.
Is that all right?
Yeah, good.
Is that good?
Yep.
Yeah, now we are.
All right, thank you. We are so excited to be here tonight with the South Platte Working Group, and our purpose is to give you an update of what the group's been doing for the last year, and then talk specifically about the 3 short-term projects that have been identified. We have a formal presentation put together, but I really want to meet your needs, so feel free to interrupt or rush us if you are familiar with the topic and want us to move on, and feel free to ask questions and get more detail if you like as well. So first of all, the working group has these 4 goals, and I have to say the first one first because I'm with the Urban Drainage and Flood Control District. The purpose is to restore and revitalize the river and its habitat while maintaining flood conveyance. As we know, based off of the floods, we just saw the importance of that flood complaints piece, but we also know the river offers us a lot more, and we haven't quite tapped into all its resources. So we also want to enhance the South Platte Corridor as a recreational resource for the entire region, to encourage and improve the opportunities for education and understanding of what the ecosystem is in the river system through an urban area, as well as to connect the communities to the river through consistent land use, economic development opportunities, as well as coordinated policies. So that's really the purpose, and what the South Platte Working Group has really been committed to, which is what I really applaud, is a collaborative process, and recognizing that we all work so much better together. Arapahoe County really put a huge opportunity out there for us by giving the working group $5 million to really catapult the projects and be there for a leveraging opportunity as we look at our short-term projects. What the working group has been putting together is a vision plan, and we did a charrette. Does anybody know what that is? Because I did not, and I looked it up, and it's really, there's no evidence that it's a real word. But what's going to come out of that charrette by reaching out to all of our stakeholders is to put a plan together for what we really envision, what we want that corridor to be, and then help us to prioritize projects and then go after funding. Debbie's looking at, what do you see, Mayor Brinkman? We will be meeting in November and see our first draft of what that charrette's going to look like. In the meantime, we have identified several projects that we want to get moving on. And one you've seen before, and that's South Platte Park enhancement. I probably won't go into much detail about that besides give you an update of where we're moving with that. Is that okay with everybody? Everybody's familiar with what that purpose of that project was? And then we'll talk a little bit about Reynolds Landing, and then more importantly, I think to update everybody, is River Run is an amazing opportunity that's a little bit further north on the river, and Ben Nielsen's here with McLaughlin Water, and they really are a world-renowned consulting firm that provides engineering services and whitewater components, and he's got some great insight and details to be sharing with us in a little bit. So just to get rezoned in South Platte Park, we looked at that plan in 2012. South Platte Park, South Suburban, as well as Littleton, gave money to do that concept plan. We had a little bit over $4.5 million in overall enhancement opportunities. We all, I think, know the challenges of the reduced flow, the loss of sinuosity. We were being disconnected from that floodplain. So it was really no longer functioning as a natural system. We looked at doing a phase 1 we started construction in fall of last year, of 2012, and we finished in the spring of this year. We, do I have a pointer here? Top one? Is it there? Oh, never mind. Okay, red circles. Good. We looked at putting a riffle pool glide series in front of Carson Nature Center, as well as some wetlands at Red Tail Lake. Those are our plans. I think you're familiar with that. We accomplished that by reshaping it. Remember, we had a wide 100-foot, went down to 40, da-da-da-da-da. This is the results. So the $88,000 that Littleton put in and the district funded, as well as Trout Unlimited and CWCB funded phase 1. This is a visual of the pool. The fishing dock that was done by Fishing is Fun has a really nice deep pool and some nice trout in there at the moment. Another picture looking at a riffle glide series and some of the terracing. That's before we did the revegetation. A picture of the bank restoration, as well as some terracing on the far right side. That was phase one. What we're hoping to move to is phase two in the January of this year, if funding comes available. And that is going from downstream of where we just finished and going north to the country club.
Do you have riprap on those curves of the river? Do you have riprap underneath the dirt?
We do. Yep. There's quite a bit of rock that you don't see, but it'll be nicely, it's a good security for us. So phase one was completed. That was $880,000. We're looking at phase two, which is $1.1 million. As you notice, the check mark's not quite there. So we are looking for some additional funding from Littleton specifically, and South Suburban's going after a water resource grant with CWCB. Hoping to do that in the January. And then we really would like to keep moving, again, utilizing this money that's been put in front of us from Arapahoe County Open Space, keep moving with this project. And what a tremendous, awesome thing that we were able to put a concept plan for a $4.5 million project together in 2012, and we could actually have this completed in the year 15. That's very impressive, I think, by all the agencies' commitments.
The speed of government.
We are making stuff happen. The phase three would be in the fall of 2014 and would go through the spring of 15. It's a little bit larger piece, and it would go from mineral all the way down to C470 in about $2.6 million. Any questions on that one?
During the extended projects, how's the aquarian, riparian life going to fare?
Good question. Part of our permit is to protect a natural waterway. So we always have water control that will allow the system to still be intact. So we'll work in half, then while we work in the other half. So it always has some kind of conveyance. We have to look at the water quality perspective, so not raising to total suspended solids as we're having disturbance in that area where we're not moving. So there's lots of best management practices that we put in place during construction.
And to piggyback on that, after the first phase, literally within days after the bulldozers had left, there were the birds that fish out of the water were back in there, and we were seeing some pretty substantial fish populations back. And I was just down there a couple of days ago, and the revegetation and the willows and the grasses that were in there are almost at 3 feet tall with the willows, and the grasses are probably at a good 5 or 6 inches. So all of that came back.
Yeah, most of the wildlife species that are here are used to an urban, disturbed, noisy environment. The construction really doesn't seem to distract them for too long.
They came back pretty quick, and it's a better place for them to be now, so they're actually healthier over there.
Yeah, and a large part of these projects is really the revegetation part. Of that $880,000, $80,000 went to the re-veg. Do you want to take over at this point?
Sure.
So the next street I just want to talk about, it's, as I call the South Platte Park, and then River Run is the two anchors, which are really going to be the catalyst for revitalizing this river corridor. So we wanted to spend some time and talk about the improvements that are being looked at from the Oxford to Union Reach along the river. I'll give you that.
Thank you. So as Laura had mentioned, we got involved with this project. Urban Drainage retained us to take a look at a couple of existing drop structures, and actually that's, I guess, the second one down below here. And that's kind of how this thing really started. But just wanted to kind of give you some reference points here of some existing features that are in this particular reach. This is the city of Sheridan up here. And this is the very end of where the Corps of Engineers straightened and kind of deepened the channel out of Chatfield after the floods in the 60s. And so going back here, so currently there's the Mary Carter Greenway Trail, which the previous presentation certainly covered. There are these existing drop structures. This is one of Inglewood's water. It's a raw water intake facility, a really important piece of infrastructure for their water supply. There's the Broken Tee Golf Course to the north. the Union Avenue boat chutes, and some ball fields there. And then there are there's a lot of industry here, road crossings and the like. So when we came on board, this is what we saw, and we definitely said, this is in pretty disrepair. This is something that is a pretty common thing around the U.S. actually, where rivers were seen as kind of tools, and you built away from them and not to them, and you really see a big momentum in the last few decades of revitalization. Certainly been involved in a lot of projects around the country that communities are starting to look at their river as a resource. And so originally we looked at just replacing these drop structures and really said, look, do we want to look at, there's tremendous opportunity here. Do we want to look at what are the possibilities for revitalization, not just putting back what's there currently? And so, we probably one of the best examples and one of the first places where this happened, this is Confluence Park, believe it or not. So you're like, wow, this is basically provides no amenity for the community whatsoever. And then today, there's been in this area, this is like in 2006, there's $4 billion in redevelopment in this area. And, Confluence Park is certainly an anchor, and, this is a kind of a classic spring, summer day. But these are also not only just economic drivers, they're also quality of life amenities for the community. So what's the vision here? So the vision really has kind of four main components to it. Connectivity, regional trail, expansion of the regional trail system that we heard is so successful. Also looking at river health, the upper right-hand picture there. This particular reach, from the Corps' perspective, is viewed as a flood conveyance facility. And with that, that's a pretty rigid thing. And so there's been a lot of efforts, and there's been a lot of work on the front end of this project to work with the Corps to look at changing that attitude and achieving both flood conveyance, but also having this quality of life amenity and dealing with river health, both aquatic and riparian habitat. Redevelopment on the bottom left there. This is a highly industrial area. That sort of thing isn't going to happen overnight, just like Confluence Park, but certainly the river's seen as a value that oftentimes can spur that redevelopment. And then also recreation, enhancing recreation both in river and along the banks. So I just wanted to show kind of a couple quick videos here just to kind of show you some possibilities and some recreation that can happen there. So this is called park and play kayaking. This is really kind of the state of the art in kayaking, where you surf on a stationary hydraulic or wave, like shown here. And what's good about this is somebody after work can come down and just park, play at one spot, and then go home. So it's a lot different than doing your river trips, which require a whole day and things like that. But it also, this particular project in the video hosted the World Freestyle Championships. We actually designed and built this feature specifically for that event. And it drew thousands of spectators this past fall. So this type of amenity can host festivals and events and bring people to the river and can be an economic driver. And then
Where
also,
was that? Where was?
It's on the Nantahala River. It's in North Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably
Where they have water.
That's actually a flow that we see on the Platte fairly. So this is river surfing, fastest growing river sport. So you definitely, when you're considering these recreational enhancements, it's kind of like where are we at now? Where is that going? So in boogie boarding or bodyboarding, you see you can do that in these features too, just like you would in Hawaii or Mexico on vacation.
I think it's a good point to bring up is the amount of flow that we're dealing with in the river. Right. And so what McLaughlin's been looking at, specifically Ben, is, on an average basis, what he's shooting for, the 80th percentile? Or dealing with that kind of flow, that these features will be functional and fun and safe. And so it's not just like Union. Those boat chutes are designed, and they're really only graded by maybe 1,000 CFS, and there's very few days in the year that you even see that. So the point of these features will that they'll be functional 80% of the time in the summer.
Yeah, so you're not going to see, like in that river surfing video, the first clip, I mean, that's like, 15,000 CFS or something crazy. But the point is here is that, and in fact, the park and play kayaking spot, that's about 400 CFS. So that actually is a flow that we see with some regularity during the spring and early summer. We haven't really seen a lot of that the last couple of years, but actually I do have a graph. I love graphs. I'm an engineer. That just kind of shows what are the average flows by month, and also show what we saw this summer. Which this summer we definitely saw kind of an average of 100 or so. If you look at kind of the running average over the summer, which kind of segues into my next slide here, is that the kayaking and the river surfing are great, like I call them high-level uses, but the reality is that you're going to have many, many more kids in tubes and personal inflatables and people wading and things like that. That's really, when you start talking about the big impact to the community, that's where you really want to make sure you accommodate that user. So this picture here on the left really is a classic example where you can see one kayaker in the very, kind of on the right there, and there's 30 times the people that are just wading and splashing and things like that. So we're also looking at these type of user groups as well. So what does that what does that kind of look like here? We're going to replace these two drop structures. That upper right is kind of the existing, and then kind of a rendering down below where really tightening the river up, like has been done at South Platte Park. It's a similar concept here. Having some meander, you can kind of see what we call sinuosity in the river and the perspective there. To get it to be more of what I call a creek within a river. You have to be able to convey these very large flows without a floodplain. All the water has to go down the channel, so you have this massive channel. But the amount of water you see on a regular basis is a lot less than that. So you want to make it function for those low and high flows. And we're looking at the extension of the Mary Carter Greenway Trail on the east bank from Big Dry Creek at the bottom here, and then connecting in here at Broken T Golf Course. This is the previous gentleman talked about what the trails look like and things like that. We're looking at the same section. I believe it's 10 feet wide on the concrete, but we're also looking at a dual trail. So looking at that Crusher Fines meandering kind of offshoot through this area to deal with the conflict of uses situation. And there are some big challenges with this connection of the trail. I think Dave knows a lot about.
Which is why it's not built yet. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks good. It looks really good from about here to here. But we have to cross through this Inglewood intake facility, which there's liability issues to be resolved, and we've gone to the board and presented them a concept, and they're on board with the project after a lot of years.
Yeah. And I think that's another plug for the South Platte Working Group, because you've got people, the elected officials and heads that are supporting and see the larger vision. They're able to influence and help our projects create that vision with the staff to say, okay, maybe we can accept not the ideal situation, but something that the whole community will benefit from. So I really appreciate the mayor of Englewood's been huge for us.
So this is just kind of a cutaway, real tight in there. And in fact, one of the things, actually, this right here is potentially very hazardous if somebody got in there. So the idea is to enclose that, and then the trail would run here, kind of tighten up the facility, because there certainly will be more people over there with the trail expansion there. There's several below-grade crossings, one at Union, one at Oxford. Those just present challenges. Is this Bellevue?
Prince.
Oh, Prince, okay. So kind of a similar deal. We'll have railing and some retaining walls to make that happen. And then also this project includes a very significant trailhead improvements at the Broken T Golf Course there. That would include a picnic shelter, a large picnic shelter, restrooms, playground, additional parking.
I think that's usually one of the biggest gripes, especially at Confluence Park, is you want to get there, you want to enjoy it, but there's no place to park. And so we're really trying to keep that in mind, that we are interested in engaging people, so then hence we want to make it easy and accessible for them to get there.
And this particular area in the river itself here, I mean, you could possibly describe it as like a mini confluence park. That's intended to be a pretty high-use river area with some cobble bar beach areas, boulder terracing, some ADA access actually into the channel itself from the trailhead, some ADA put-ins and takeouts. Something that we've seen, and actually we're involved with the master planning of Confluence Park, a redo, an update. And that's been actually one of the big comments from stakeholders is that there's a lot of therapies for disabled veterans and the like that involve boating. And so that's becoming, the Wounded Warriors type programs have a lot of boating components. So we definitely wanted to offer that here as well. And then this isn't currently in the project, but when we looked at what this reach could be, as Laura mentioned, the Union Chutes. The Union Chutes, they function well at high flows that you just don't see very often. They're passable and all that, and that's fine. But when you start talking about getting people to want to recreate and do water-based recreation, they lack. So there is a potential future phase to kind of update those and bring them up to kind of the state of the art. And then there's a lot of industry here, so there's been actually some really cool ideas. Apparently there's a thing called what is it called? Car hinge? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Car hinge in like Nebraska. Because this right here is a scrap yard here and the recycling there. But there's been this idea that at one point there was talks of redeveloping this. At some point, I think that fell apart with the downturn and all that. But certainly, I think there's some opportunities for redevelopment there. But in the short term, kind of embracing that with industrially inspired art pieces, viewing platform for
the car crusher.
Car crush, and there's some other ideas that have kind of been floating around. So there's some heritage here that even if it does be redeveloped, I think it's kind of unique reach.
And you might want to add that at the charrette, we invited those industries. They, in the past, have been very closed door and not wanted to have any conversations. They've seen us as wanting to take their land, or there's been even issues where they haven't even wanted us to put more of a natural fencing so that you couldn't see some of that. And they came to the charrette, and we've opened up great dialogue with these guys. They are excited, they're enthusiastic, they see this as an opportunity for themselves too. So I think that's one of the huge milestones that we hit. I've been on the working group for 6 years, and it's always been a difficult relationship there. And this is the first time that it's now a friendly relationship and everybody's working together. So a lot of things can happen.
The momentum is
A lot
there.
of good ideas too. Yeah.
Yeah, just kind of, our experience with these type of projects, it definitely feels like a lot of wind at our back on this type of project. There's a lot of things that we're definitely working for it with, dealing with the Corps and their partnership in this, and then surrounding communities and private industry too. And then, Laura, do you want to talk about this, or do you want me to talk about it?
Sure, I can cover it. So currently we have McLaughlin, and also working with Bob Stearns and Bill Newman, from DHM as a design team, finishing up a preliminary design in 2013, and then we want to move to a final design and get all our permitting together by the summer of 14. We'd like to break the project. Okay, let me go, instead of phasing, we go right to the cost, because you'll see why, when you see that price tag, why the importance of phasing. But we're looking at, $12 to $14 million project. And after the preliminary design, we're going to go in and do a best value bid with our pre-qualified list of contractors that the district uses, so we can start really narrowing in and focusing, do some value engineering with a contractor on board with us, so we can really get a better idea of the pricing as we're starting to try to collect the funding for it. We would like to get the first phase in, which would involve mostly the river enhancement work downstream of Oxford.
This area right here.
And one of the reasons to do that project is Arapahoe County Open Space. We've already pitched to them. They seem to be on board as a 50% partner. The district's willing to put quite a bit of funding towards it, and we think we can use our money as well as a little bit from Sheridan to start this project out in phase 1 and build in fall of 14 and spring of 15. Do a little bigger project for phase 2, which would start getting the work done to underneath, for the trail work to get underneath Union and Oxford. There's a lot of money involved. As you probably are aware, there's that 90-inch outfall that comes in just upstream of Oxford. That's a big thing to deal with. And then all the improvements that we need to do for the Englewood intake plant. And then there's a lot of grading that needs to happen and to increase that parking facility for the trailhead. So we're looking at that as a phase 2 project. I should say, so phase 1 is about $3.8 million. Phase 2 is also about $3.8 million. And then phase 3 is a large chunk that involves the river work that is upstream of Oxford. And that'll be, what, 4 drop structures total after that? 4 drops. And then making the official connection between the underpasses. And then doing the kind of the final recreation components to the trailhead, which would be the restroom, the pavilion, the hardscape in that area. So that's how we have it looked at it. So it's putting funding together starting this year through 2017. So over that 4-year funding period, we think it's a little bit more palatable to communities to try to work together and leverage money. To give you another idea, because I think it all comes down to money, right? If you look at the money that Arapahoe County is willing to put in, the district, CWCB, is that it? I think those are our 3 committed.
Yeah, I think so.
80% of our funding's together. So we're really going after another 20%. We're looking for Englewood's part of that 80%. Englewood's really interested in having that trailhead piece, and so they're taking kind of the brunt of that. So another 20% to get this project done, looking to other grant opportunities, hopefully a GoCo, maybe going to Metro Roundtable, but looking for South Suburban, Littleton, and Sheraton. By all pitching in a little bit, we can all put an amazing project in the ground by the year 2017.
The stretch that's just upstream from Oxford is a pretty deep banked section of the river along there. And one of the things that we know is south of Mineral, the river still is deciding where it wants to be. Where it's straight, what are the opportunities for the river to meander after you kind of put some of this effort in?
Very, very little.
It's getting locked down.
I mean, this right here.
And then as it goes up by the golf course too. But yeah.
Yeah, let's just take back to that. Okay, so this is kind of what you're talking about here, where you have these banks here and here. I mean, currently the right-of-way of the whole channel is the top of the bank's roughly 50-ish, 75 feet wide. So, I mean, essentially the backbone of this is all. I mean, the whole reason this is like this is for this 100-year event. So you can imagine a 100-year flow coming down and being completely contained in this channel. So, in this reach, there's actually like 5 feet of what we call freeboard. So, in a 100-year event, there's still 5 feet more of height and depth in the channel before it would overtop the banks. The idea here is the Corps is very. Their charter on this project is purely flood conveyance and flood protection. So the idea is that everything would basically kind of be within that backbone structure that the Corps is, they built it, they're okay with it. And so one of the reasons the costs are so high here, there's a couple of reasons, is that the Corps, we have to provide 100-year stability of structure. So when you put 100-year water, I mean, the water is flying down this thing at a 100-year event. So the structures are very big, they're very robust, and that's a product of, and it's very important to provide flood protection. I mean, there's a very good reason why this was done after the floods in the 60s. So yeah, to your point, I mean, you're never going to get a natural meander that you would in an unencumbered river system. But what we want to do is we want to get some of that back. We want to make a defined what we call thalwag or low flow channel, so that it helps with things like water temperature. When you have really wide, flat, shallow areas, it gets hot. I mean, trying to do that. And then also, we have these 2 drop structures that have about 12 feet of drop, and we want to redistribute that over, about 3/4 of a mile of river. So it kind of gives you more of a natural, I guess, more gentle gradient, which is better for habitat, fish passage, recreation. It's pretty much, the higher the drops are, the less value they are pretty much to everything.
More questions on that one? We will be back with more detail. The other project I wanted to touch on was Reynolds Landing, and I don't have much to say except it's on our radar. The district's interested in, and I think Arapahoe County is also willing to put some funding in 2014 to start looking at the opportunities. As everyone here well knows, with the Breckenridge Brewery coming in, this could be another really great revitalization project. We have a lot of drop here to work with, and those drop structures by far are in need of repair. So the district is willing to be a pretty substantial partner in that as well. So if you have ideas on that, what you want to see there, I think a huge beer tent, permanent beer tent structure would be awesome for a garden. But those are things that we'll be looking at in 2014. What I envision us doing is maybe every 6 months or so, probably coming back to both of you and let you know what's happening, where we are, what funding opportunities that we have, that we're trying to get in a status of. Happy to answer any questions in between those times. I can leave my contact information. Mayor Brinkman's also very knowledgeable, and Sue, of what's going on.
Laura, what is the missing dollar amount on the second phase of the restoration? What are you short?
This next phase for phase 2?
Phase 2.
If district's putting in 200, Littleton's putting in 250, and we're getting 550 from Arapahoe County, we're good for this phase.
Okay, so phase 2 is paid for.
Yeah.
Okay.
What we're looking at for phase 3 would be the district putting another 4, Littleton another 4, and then hopefully Metro Roundtable through South Suburban putting in 4.
Okay. I thought your check mark was not quite full on that one, that you thought there was more money.
Well, because I don't actually have it in the bank, I don't actually say that it's fully checked off. Until those IGAs are signed,
I
I'm
understand.
just, yeah. Yeah.
Any questions,
Good question.
anyone?
I just have one. When you go from the restoration to the area that's not restored downriver, is there any impact? Is there any impact upstream or downstream when you go from, I mean, we're sort of channeling in this and then it widens again, I'm assuming. Just geomorphologically, is there anything that happens at that transition?
We're in such a disturbed section of the river because it doesn't, a normal system has sediment moving through it, so it's moving sandbars and it's letting the channel form. And South Platte Park somewhat had that opportunity to do it, but since you didn't have a sediment source to move it, it's a very dysfunctional system, so there really isn't a huge difference between the two, and that's why we kind of artificially have to create those terraces and those meanders through the park. But without that sediment load moving through the downstream reach, it's really just shooting it into a very artificial. I think whatever we can do to break down the barriers of the vertical barriers that we have, by taking that 12 feet of drop that are in 2 to maybe 2.5 footers, that definitely improves that habitat system to move along. But unfortunately, we're in a pretty unnatural state.
Great, thank you. I would also just add that the flooding that happened up north this summer was so incredible when you see the work that urban drainage had done on areas that were affected. What those areas worked exactly as they were supposed to, and they saved lives and they saved homes. A lot of what urban drainage had done up there was to take homes and property out of the floodplain. And so while, this, if we were to get something like that, and the chance is probably not if, it's when, but all of this pre-work, all of this money really, it's not the pretty stuff. It's the boulders under the water, and all of those things are going to allow this to continue to operate as it needs to in the most important time for life and safety. And we'll have this beautiful adventure river that will be a great economic and recreational opportunity for our whole community, but it will also then, when it has to, it'll revert back to exactly what it needs to do. And so, like you said, that's why it's so expensive, because we have to do this. And the Corps, I will say, the relationship with the Corps has come so far. We can really count them more as a partner as opposed to the adversary, and that's just been over the last couple of years. But so, a lot of people have mentioned, because of the floods, well, what do you do? What are you doing to protect us from that with this? And so I think it's a good story all the way around.
Yeah, just this is a more curiosity question, because it was residential structures outside of the district that were built on essentially riverside positions that are the remnants are somewhere in Nebraska, I think. What's going to be the position to possibly relocate those folks? I mean, is that anything you've heard about in kind of this aftermath?
It's one of those questions that we've been asking in-house, and so within the district boundaries, we have just been promoting that our construction fund is also dedicated for preservation. And so if there's opportunities to be snapping up some of those properties, we will definitely willing partner to the local communities as a funding source to start buying those up. Unfortunately, as you move up through Lyons and Estes, they don't have a flood control district the benefit of that. So they're scrambling a little bit. The Colorado Association of Stormwater and Floodplain Managers, CASPM, has been trying to assist them and giving them some guidance and that encouragement. I just heard today, the houses that don't have any flood insurance, which is, I think, 80% of them, the most they can get is $32,000, and that's it. Then they're on their own. And so that just tells you the economics. It just doesn't make sense for a lot of these properties to be where they are. But a lot of it, too, is emotion. Mm-hmm. And some people just have a conviction to be where they are, and you're not going to change that. So we're trying to get the message out. I don't know how well it will be heard.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Great job.
I do have some breakouts if you're interested in the funding end. I can leave that up here if you want to grab it afterwards.
Okay. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Brinkman.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and just move directly to our next item, which is a presentation of the Emergency Operations Plan. And Jim?
Yep. Jim's here. Yep. Okay. Well, Jim, while we let folks exit the table and Jim comes in, I just want to let council know that...
Oh, do you need to close your meeting?
No, probably, just for the record.
Little housework.
Yeah. South Suburban Board meeting, special meeting is now closed.
And thank
you all.
you. Thank you, South Suburban. Appreciate it.
So...
Thank you.
While we're rotating, let me just let folks know that what we're doing, what you've got in front of you, at least electronically, is an update of a 2005 emergency operations plan. And obviously a lot has changed in the world as we continue, the nation, as we continue to have various calamities, and we learn from those calamities, and our first responders, both in police and fire and public works and others, learn how to communicate with each other and how to respond. And so what Jim's going to go through tonight is really a continuation of work that Councilman Beckman started while he was employed in the police department. And so Jim has graciously taken that on because this is not his core duty. So he has been working on this for over a year and really has put together best management practices. So I'm going to turn it over to him and explain what the policy document before you is and some of the substantial changes and kind of how we're structuring this plan as we move forward into the future. So Jim, thanks for joining us.
Okay, thank you. You're right, about 2 years ago when Commander Beckman retired to private life,
I was appointed, my other duties is assigned by the fire department to continue on his work. With the assistance of IT, we were able to raid his office and get some of his files, his emergency plan that he had been working on. And we've looked at that emergency plan, looked at Inglewood's plan, looked at the 3 different counties that we work with, and also with the state, and incorporated a tremendous number of changes into the plans and updated it. What we had before was the 2005 Emergency Operations Plan, the one that until very recently was on the city internet. We're hoping to replace that with a new plan, which you should have gotten electronically, which is the Emergency Operations Plan. The only change between the one I have in my hand and the one you have is that in the last week I updated the logo. It was kind of an oversight, and I know Kelly Nardi will yell at me if I hadn't have done that. So we have updated the logo on that. Essentially what we would like to do is make these documents, make this document essentially a policy statement. This is the policy statement that says this is what we're going to do if there is a disaster emergency in the city of Littleton. This is where we get the authority to do this. This is how it's going to be done and handled. These are the agreements that need to be made, and so on. So that's basically a policy statement that you have before you. The nuts and bolts of how we're going to actually accomplish all of this is going to be an internal document. So this is about a 20-page document on policy. Then we have a nuts and bolts 80-page document that will be internal for the city staff. It'll say what we're going to do for a flood, who's responsible, what department head does what, who do you call, what are the phone numbers, what are the other agencies, and so on. And because of that, it has 24/7 private phone numbers in here, numbers and things that may need to be changed and updated weekly, monthly. This is something that we don't want to put on the internet. We do want it available to the entire city employee workforce. We will keep it on the intranet, whether it's on the link or in the future as a Google Doc, accessible, password protected. But what we would like to do is your permission to go ahead and approve the Emergency Operations Plan. One of the major changes in it is that the 2005 plan was for the city of Littleton. This was the city of Littleton's emergency plan. One of the major changes that we did was, well, the city of Littleton has a plan, but the city of Littleton also has intergovernmental agreements with the fire department that puts the fire department responsible in the fire districts and in Highlands Ranch. So if you take that together, that's over 100 square miles, depending if you include the backcountry or not, and about 220,000 in population, which makes this about the 4th largest city in Colorado. So we wanted to really write in how we're going to address that with the other counties. So the way it's addressed in here is that the city of Littleton is responsible for the city of Littleton's jurisdictional areas, and that if it's outside of the city of Littleton, but in an area that's contracted to the city, like the fire districts or the ranch, by default, Columbine Valley or Beaumont is their fire district, that we would default to the appropriate county emergency plan if it's in an unincorporated area. So that was never really defined in the in the previous documents. That is defined in the new document. As I said, it's divided into 2 functional sections. The one emergency operations plan, which is the policy, and then the nuts and bolts, which are the annexes. The annexes include the 15 federal government what are called emergency support functions. So what are you going to do for fire? How are you going to do your transportation, your sheltering, law enforcement, terrorism, et cetera, et cetera. And then it has some specific annexes in there for hazmat, flood, tornado, winter storm, and how the city would be handling all of those. So those are all in there in detail. Those can literally change on a weekly basis and be updated on a weekly basis. And it describes in detail the city department roles and responsibilities, which department head, which person, and so on. And that's essentially the basic overview of where we're going with this. we would like your approval. Hopefully, you've all had a chance to read through it. I'd love to entertain any questions you have as to why we're doing this, where we're going with this. The city of Littleton is not immune to any disaster or emergencies. I think, as you all know, we've had many here in Littleton. And in this area that's covered with the new plan, we've had Columbine High School, which was a quasi-terrorism event. It wasn't really terrorism defined, but it was a pretty significant event. We've had 4 significant rail incidents, 2 major derailments, a locomotive that was delivered to us on fire because they thought we could get to the railroad tracks, and a leaking rail car, which turned out to be a non-toxic gas, but it was parked at the light rail station downtown. We've had major highway accidents. Some of you remember the nitrogen tanker that rolled over and ruptured at Prince and Santa Fe. Great, it was nitrogen, that's 80% air. But what if it had been chlorine, ammonia, something like that? Wildfire, we've had major wildfires down in Highlands Ranch, the Cherokee Ranch fire. Flooding events, while we haven't had flooding events here, something like the Lions event could happen here. Lions wasn't anticipating that. But they had a series of, I think it was 6 dams up above Lions. 5 of them failed, the 6th one held. If that 6th one had let go, you would have a wall of water probably 20 feet high going through Lions.
Instead, it was just 6.
Instead, it was just 6 and 100 yards wide, yeah. I spent a week or 9 days up there doing search and rescue, and the damage that was done by that river and that flood is absolutely incredible. It's overwhelming, the power of that water. We've also had 2 major natural gas ruptures. We had a very large line in Highlands Ranch, I think it was a 30-inch line in Highlands Ranch several years ago, and then we had the smaller line down off of 470 earlier this year. So those types of incidents can happen within the city of Littleton. So I think it's important that we get these documents revised, updated, and the annexes of who's going to do what, how are you going to do it, who are you going to call, set in the process, and get them approved.
Any questions from anyone? Bill?
Jim, in taking a look at this, I mean, we have a number of intergovernmental agreements, and also there's county, state, and other emergency pieces. To what extent has this policy document been aired with them or reviewed by at least the technicians side of that?
It has been discussed with the majority of the people involved, and actually pieces of their plans are incorporated into our plan. And in this plan, it does say that in the event that it is outside the city of Littleton, we will default to that jurisdiction's plan. That's one of the concessions that we said, that if it's in Columbine Valley, it's Littleton Fire Protection District, kind of falls under this plan, but we're going to use either the Arapahoe or Jefferson County plan, depending on which side of the roads it's on. And we will default with their emergency management and assist them, right? So we have vetted that, and once this is completely approved, the copies of this will be going to all 3 counties, so they will have it.
And then the follow-on is a much more parochial item on page 9.
Okay.
It refers to the responsibilities of the mayor and city council, and given that we're a majority group, what are the practical elements on convening to allow for either the announcement or the subsequent termination announcement that would occur?
In the event of, and I think that's actually in this plan, in the event of our necessity to declare a disaster or declare an emergency, that request initially, the city manager will have the ability to go ahead and say it's a disaster, let's get everything rolling. But it also says in here that council needs to be immediately notified. And council can meet, because we're going to need some other things. We're going to need financing. We're going to need official approvals. We're going to need intergovernmental agreements. We cannot request anything from the state of Colorado as far as assistance with other rescue teams, things like that, without going through the county first, because we're not a large enough city. So that has to come from our council. Our council and city manager have to request that from the appropriate counties.
And then
so does that answer?
Well, I would make the request that at least the council gets aware of what might be in the detail.
Okay.
Regarding that.
Yes, regarding that. I'm talking about the convening and, or the
Okay.
surveying or that component, because you're now involving folks that typically aren't considered employees of the city, and not on the intranet that I know of for that.
Okay.
I'm not saying we want to be, but
Okay.
but at least that section that deals with the convening and the interface, that we have some understanding of that.
Okay. Do you want that as a separate document or written that into
We'll
this?
take care of that, yeah. We'll
Okay.
work with the attorney's office on how to communicate that
All right.
appropriately.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
This plan also would work for like the minor floods we get through Lee Gulch and Little's Creek. They don't get major, they could get more major than they have in the past, but
Right.
and floods on both of them.
Right. It covers, one of the sections in here is on flooding and what to do and scaling it up from a small scale flood that affects a neighborhood, maybe closes a couple streets, interrupts a sewer line or something like that, on up to a major flood that would incapacitate an area of a city or a major portion of the city. Right. So,
Bruce?
and these are both pretty much what I would call living documents. They can be updated as needed, so that if someone changes, an organization changes, such as the wastewater or stormwater areas, things like that, changing personnel, names, job functions, that can be readily updated into these. Whereas before, in the old document, that was a major issue to get things updated and changed. Yeah.
Jim, I want to compliment you on doing the work, because I know it's very hard.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. And just comment to council that there's a few GOTAs that you have to have in one of these because of the federal system. FEMA has certain expectations, and you have to be on the National Incident Management System as far as how you run. And I feel comfortable that that document puts Littleton in the right footing so that we know, should something happen and then we need to move to the FEMA side of things, we have in place the things that are the GOTAs. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for your prior work, because without that, I'd still be another year out.
Peggy?
So I'm curious how often you practice, even though you can't really practice. I mean, you can't practice the whole thing.
Actually, we did do a practice earlier this spring. We brought together the entire city staff. We kind of held off a little bit because we wanted to make the police training room into a functional emergency operations center. We were able to get the telephones, get them in there. We waited for the police to get all the telecommunication stuff going. We ran a brief, maybe a 3-hour exercise in there. I have another exercise that is ready to go. I'm waiting for some materials that I'll be getting from Inglewood on Thursday, which 2 months ago, a flood with rupturing McClellan Reservoir looked like a good idea, and I think we've all done that since. But they are getting me the McClellan floodplain, what would happen if that dam ruptured and came down through Littleton, getting me that information. So we're going to run that through the EOC and get the staff together, hopefully when we can schedule it in a month or two, once budget is all away and people have some time.
Well, I can't
And
remember.
my goal is to try and run 2 with city staff every year as a
And
minimum.
are you thinking maybe ever to at least have council?
We would love to have council.
We
once
were
get-
invited about 3 or 4 years ago, we were.
Right. What we're trying to do now is get the Emergency Operations Center at the police department set and functional. I'm making position-specific clipboards for each position, so if you're fire, you know what you're doing. If you're streets, you know what you're doing. You have a checkbox to go down. We've decided that the EOC would be up there. This would be a media room. There would be a senior staff room, probably in the city manager's conference room, where city council would be meeting to discuss policy, because we have legal right there also, and our PIO office right there. So we're working through all of that, and once all those details are set, we would love to have city council in for one of these.
Thank you.
Or all of them, because I think that's important. We need to go through the process of something's really bad, we need a disaster declaration, we need money, we need finances, and then we need to put it all back together.
I mean, in Lyons, everything came through, the major stuff was over in 3-4 days, but it's going to be another 2 months before they have gas and electric up there and their roads fixed. And who's financing that? Who's in charge of fixing that? That's what the politicians then take over, is who is taking care of all this? Those are the elected representatives that are then making things go back together and getting it back to normal. So that's where we need to get city council involved.
Thank you.
It's the back end of the Humpty Dumpty plan.
It is. I mean, the emergency part is fun. You guys get the tough job at the end. So.
Bruce?
One thing that a city council could exercise is determining emergency ordinances. You know, and some will fit and some won't, and so, you know, that whole discussion process is, I think, a great exercise for council during one of these training exercises.
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
So, council, we have a special meeting, so we could, if we wanted to put a motion in a second, we could vote to approve this policy document. It is scheduled to be on our consent agenda on November 5th. But if you guys are okay with what we've heard tonight and have any other...
I'd rather wait and hear the council's instructions before I kind of vote on it.
We're not going to have that to you before November 5th, I would imagine. And the details of it, and I would.
Well, we're voting on the policy.
You're voting on the policy document that's before you. That's what we're asking you to adopt. And I think there's a difference of providing the documents versus, as Jim's been discussing, really walking through the operational components. And I think the role and the goal of the council within any of the major incident 14 examples that Jim gave are ones that, to Peggy's comments, we would set up through pick 1 or 2 a year and walk through those trainings for it. So I think just to clarify what's before you on the policy EOP versus the annex component of it.
This would be a resolution, not an ordinance, right?
Correct. And I think it doesn't even necessarily, except our city clerk would probably prefer a resolution. It's just a motion to approve the document. But would you prefer a resolution?
It's not me preferring it, Kristen preferring it.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yes.
I would prefer to wait till November 5th to do it and make sure we got everything covered we need to have covered, done it correctly. If we're putting it on consent.
Yes, it's currently on consent pending the outcome of this discussion for you. But I just brought it up to the mayor because you did post this as a special meeting and you got a lot of items on the 5th. So.
Okay.
You can make the motion and see what happens.
I'm okay with waiting till the 5th, based on what people are saying.
Okay. Thank you very much. Great job.
Do you want a motion to
Thank you,
that
Jim.
effect? Do you want a motion to that effect?
No.
Okay.
Okay, Bruce.
Yeah, here. So we're continuing. I guess my question is going to be, I'm happy to read this, but are we, it's a continuation of the prior meeting, which we,
It says that in
huh? Permit,
there, further discussion.
Yeah.
all right. Move that council go into executive session for pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute, Section 24-6-402, sub 4, sub F, for further discussion of personnel matters concerning the city manager.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion.
And, oh, by the way, so involved will be all of council and, that's it? Okay.
So this is just all council.
Council.
Still second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Do a roll call?
Mayor Brickman?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallman?
Aye.
Councilmember Beckman?
Yes.
Councilmember Cernanik?
Aye.
Councilmember Gold?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yes.
Okay. And we will not return to this room after our exec session.
I was going to mention the fact that I've got 2 entries for the stride on Sunday if anybody needs it, because I'm not going to use it. And I've also got complimentary certificates for doing stuff at pools, ice arenas, golf, batting cages, recreation centers that I won at the retreat that I'm probably not going to win. So use, if any of you guys want it.
Yeah.
It's Friday, Sunday.
I don't think I could use it this year.
Bronco game on.